I get the feeling we're going to differ badly when we come through this last half of the season as well.
Hi everyone, welcome back to part 2 of season 24, Talking About Who. In part 1, myself and the Rezzies decided that Time of the Rani was our favourite on 20 points and Paradise Towers was second on 18. But we plunge onwards. I should introduce, shouldn't I, who we are. I'm P-Bal and I'm also joined by...
Hello, I'm still James.
And hello, I'm Jason. It's the backgrounds again, it's just there.
What? Did you not know that the Quarks were in this story? Honestly, I'm not going to rest until I superimpose the Quarks on every story.
I can't wait to hear about them.
I think the Quarks have scared you out of giving the stats over now. I think you've lost your stats.
Yeah, it's been quite stat-free, hasn't he? There's been very few.
Well, you know, if you're going to question the stats, I'm just going to bring on the Quarks.
Just every stat now is around Quarks.
Originally, Sputnik was going to be a Quark that was stuck on the front of the bus.
Anyway, we digress.
Delta and the Bannermen. I mean, we're off to Wales, so come on, Clifford. Heidi, hi. What do you think of Delta and the Bannermen? Bannerman, if you've got the target book.
Oh, what's occurring? Well. Shangri-La, Ken Dodd, and a whole lot of nostalgic Wales for you in 1950s. And I have got to say, this story has got a very special place in my heart because I grew up
in 1950s Wales.
Beg pardon? Don't steal my punchline. As a child, our family used to go to Barry Butlins for our holidays. So I'm quite familiar with the Butlins camp there at, well, it's not there anymore, of course, but it was there. And so to have a story set in Barry back in the 80s for me was just amazing. And actually, all things considered, forget my patriotic sort of, my patriotic approach to this. This is actually a favorite story of mine. It is so ridiculously camp. It is so ridiculously OTT, but it is actually a really good story. And everybody's coming into their own as we come into this one. And, you've got a great pacey, energetic script. It's a simple story. The direction is handled well, all on location. The only studio scenes in this story are TARDIS based. Everything else is on location. And I think this has got, bar none, one of the best guest cast lists for a McCoy story throughout the entire run of his tenure on the show. So I love this story. But we're back in Wales.
I have to admit that the casting for this season, they must have gone out with so many sort of like wish lists and been really surprised at the number of people that went, yeah, all right, then I'll do it. And when I was looking into the cast, there were some people in this that I was like, oh, I don't actually know who they are. But like Stubby K was a huge like Broadway star. To me, it's always Marvin Acme from Roger Rabbit, but he had a huge career in Broadway. He was, really celebrated and, like you say, really good cast members. I think Ken Dodd, like you say, we've talked about stunt casting a lot, but actually it's all right. It's not as badly pitched as Richard Bryars in the previous story. It's not without my niggles on this story, I have to say. Well, I'm not going to sort of go through all of them now, but it is it's a good, it's a fun story. It starts off in different place and gets everybody together in Wales in 1959. You've got this sort of bounty hunter storyline. It's okay. It's not, sadly, one of my favourites, but it's enjoyable to watch. And I watched it last night, and it was quite an enjoyable thing to watch.
Awkwardly, I almost wore my Shangri-La top. So it'd been like 2 out of the 3 of us have been taxed by Clayton for our ways. Yeah, am I right in saying that Belinda auditioned to be Romana? Or you're looking both blankly looking back. I think Belinda auditioned for Romana. She didn't get it. We should note, obviously. Yeah, and this is also obviously the first. I'll keep saying obviously as well. The first of our almost companions, isn't it? Because Sarah Griffiths is Ray and Sophie is Ace. It was sort of which would be not be. I wonder, and I pose this question. I wondered whether, had it gone with Sarah Griffiths as Ray, whether she'd have done a slight dodo during the course of the stories, just taken the accent away.
No question at all. That was exactly how I was going to say this. That accent would have had to have gone because
he's been iodized.
I mean, I've heard that accent mimicked many a time over the years, but it would have, I think, grated quite quickly. I mean, I'm obviously Welsh and I'm more than happy to hear it. However, I don't know many Welsh people that speak like that. So I think it would have had to have been dodoed a little bit, I feel.
In truth, I know when we did an event with Sarah, someone said, why didn't you do the accent on stage? She said, if I'd done the accent on stage and anyone was in the audience who was actually Welsh, I wouldn't have got out alive. So I think she admits that maybe it wasn't the strongest performance on the accent front. She's very enthusiastic. I do think she's very charismatic, and she works well with Sylvester, and they have some nice moments. I slightly feel for Bonnie in that sense of bringing in your replacement, not this one. No, we'll bring another one in next week. And because it sort of slightly sort of pushes her out of the focus in some ways.
But there's a really nice. Sorry, James. There's a really nice little snippet between them right at the very end of the episode 3, where he looks at her and she sort of looks at him and he looks at her again, and it's almost like he's going to ask her to join the crew. Yeah, and you can tell she has really caught his eye from a point of view of the way they've been together through the story. So it's just a little subtle thing. It's
even when they're at the dance, and Billy says, I'm going to sing this song, and she thinks it's about her, and obviously it's not, and she's all sort of like crestfallen, and the doctor spots it and just goes, do you want to, and she's like, yeah, let's go and dance, and there are those lovely moments between them. They do have a kind of chemistry in this episode. They're off with the motorbike and stuff like that, so they do work really well together. And had she sort of said that, if at this point Mel had said, I'm going to stay here, I could quite understand why the doctor would say, okay, well, Ray, you come with me. I think that sort of crossover would work. But of course, we're jumping ahead, because although Bonnie had said she was leaving, it's not until the next episode, so the next story. So, but I can see why she was considered.
It's interesting, actually, James, because this was, and I'm going to pull a stat out here, so you may have this.
Go on.
Stat out. This was, interestingly, they wanted to end the season with a 6-part story, and it didn't come off. And in the end, the same technical crew have worked on both the 3-parters as we end the season. And I think essentially, had it been a 6-part story and she had been cast in that, and for whatever reason, Sophie hadn't been cast, then potentially that's how it could have worked. But I don't know that for sure. And obviously, they had 2 stabs at trying to find the right companion, because at that stage, it was going to be Bonnie's last story. The 6-part would have been Bonnie's last story. So they knew they had to replace her. So I think that's sort of where this comes up. But obviously, rest is history. And, I'm never going to say a bad word about our Sophie, that's for sure.
And Sarah gets the awkward exit where she drives the bike really timidly round, and she looks very uncertain driving the Vincent off at the end, doesn't she? It's like shit, 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 and then off she goes. It's just quite a mixed thing, isn't it, Delta and the Bannermen? I don't know whether I've done this anecdote before. I'm getting like one of the turns at an event now, and we rehearsed at the Acton Hilton, and basically when I went to university, Aberystwyth, so you know it was the hometown. I took a few Doctor Who videos with me, and you know it was an era where Doctor Who wasn't on, and it wasn't a celebrated thing. But you know, you got a lot of time to fill at university. You've got a lot of drinking. You've got a lot of time to fill, and we did put a couple on, and I can remember sort of thinking, you know, you have a fan mindset that goes, actually, I can't show them that because that's got that in it. I can't show them that because that's good. And you go through all the stories you can't show because there's going to be something that's really embarrassing. So you think it's got to be something good. It's got to be Caves of Androzani, and you put it on, and they all die because it's so boring for them because they just don't get it because they're a Notwee. The story that we watched twice in one night because they could not get enough of it was Delta and the Bannermen.
Really?
Wow, yes, good story choice.
Absolutely. When we'd finished it, it was like back to the start of the tape. We were watching that again. We watched it twice in one night. It was, and it's really weird because you would never say to anyone. I mean, maybe you would now because you know, being 40 and inhibited on it all, you just go, yeah, put Delta and Bannermen on. But at university, you would just kind of go, and Delta was what they liked, and it's funny, isn't it? Because what you think, you know, the public want or don't want, and you know, it is fun. I think that's you, and also I think it's at the point now where you couldn't imagine the Sixth Doctor being. I think you could imagine the Sixth Doctor being in either of the first two stories, but I couldn't imagine the Sixth Doctor doing any of the other stuff. Actually,
this is a Sylvester McCoy story. You can tell it's you know, it, like you say, it's uniquely his. You know, it'd be difficult to see any other Doctor in this story. And the two words I wrote down whenever I write my score down, I always put a little note, and I put fun romp, which is exactly what you just said. It is a fun romp. There's lots of, you know, things going on with this story. There are you know, again, you've got these, you know, you've got the two Americans who were looking for the satellite. You've got the beekeeper. You've got the camp. You've got all these, you know, the bounty hunters. You've got all these sort of separate elements that end up being interwoven. They all come together. It's another one of those stories where the Doctor unites a lot of people to sort of defeat a common enemy. It's not without. So, you know, they blow up the entire bus of Navarinos. You know, it's just like, you know, they've spent ages growing this crystal, you know, which he almost drops, and you're like, oh, the tension, we almost, you know, almost break it, and then they blow up the bus, you know, so they don't get away. You know, so there's some quite sort of quite a high body count in this story when you think about the number of people that are either blown up, shot, you know, ionized or whatever else. There's quite
ionized.
It's an ionized.
Ionized, I tell you, ionized. Actually, if you think about it, right, this is essentially a story about genocide.
Of the Daleks.
And it's actually such a twee setting that it's placed. It's literally a three-parter, short, snappy. Actually, the first three-parter since Planet of the Giants, by the way. I'll put another stat out there, as James seems to be trying.
He's all with his stats today.
I'm all over the stats today. But essentially, there's actually a really dark undercurrent in this story.
Hang on. Can I just ask, how many parts was the two Doctors?
2. 3.
We'll move on. It was a good stat.
No, it was they were 50-minute episodes, so it doesn't count. It's not canon. But when you think about it, they mask a really serious storyline here, with this sort of really authentic 50s thing going over the top. To me, this is the closest Doctor Who comes to actually being a musical. because it's got that little bit of a Back to the Future sort of vibe about it, because you've got all that sort of rock and roll and that sort of 60s music and that, 50s music, and that sort of, even the incidental music is written in such a way that it's helping to support the story, but it's presented in quite an upbeat sort of, on the top of the surface, a bit light and a bit sort of, you know, a bit theatre. And I like that about this story.
I was going to say, you obviously like that. I find the incidental music with the rock and roll music, or the, you know, the chase, you know, the motorbike music, just a little bit OTT for me. It's kind of like, you go from that sort of like sort of thing, and then you're into sort of McCoy incidental music. That for me, I like the music, but I almost want it to be more like, get rid of the incidental stuff and just have the music of the time, because, you know, it's very evocative of the 1950s, and I like that. But then you go off in the sort of like back to normal Doctor Who music, if you like, you know. And we've talked about experiments with music in different Doctor Who episodes before. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. And I almost wish they'd just gone, do you know what, for this, we're just going to have, you know, 1950s music. We're gonna do something slightly different, because it's almost like a historical. I know it's not a historical, but it has that feeling of, you are now in the 1950s, and I like that, and I think it really, the music does help that. But I find it's a little bit jarring when you suddenly go back to normal instrumental music. That's just me.
Well, it achieved its purpose if you thought it came from the 50s. So that's good. The story succeeded then, hasn't it?
And don't we get Des Connor's widow, as she is now? She's one of the singers, isn't she? See, we've all got the stats today.
Loving the stats coming out. And to be honest, I believe the Chimera Baby was going to be a quark originally, from what I understand, but there you go.
Now, again, this is another part here. Okay, so it's about genocide, but it's also about incest, because they've got one baby that they're going to rebuild the race from. But that ain't no happy gene pool.
But he was injecting himself with that green stuff, so he's now.
I know, it gets even more dubious. So he's genetically mutating himself, and then they're going to inbreed. The Shimmerans are all going to be very strange-looking things. I mean, they are already as eggs, but I mean, it looks like a Sontaran scout ship, doesn't it, when it comes out to start with?
It looks like something out of a Dan Dare comic, you know, the alien green baby. Just it's very odd.
I mean, we can also take a few moments out of our lives here to console, commiserate even Billy, who basically thinks, whoa, she looks a bit of all right, I'm in here for the night, and ends up turning into an alien creature and trying to rebuild their race. I mean, in the space of 24 hours, he makes this decision. But that's some heavy commitment. He goes, well, old Ray's been trying to answer her arm for years, not interested. Old Delta rocks up, and it's like, oh yeah, I'm here. I'm off to space with you, sweetheart. I mean, they've not even spent more than a picnic together. What has she done on that picnic that has convinced him that he's worth going to space for?
I mean, there's that little pit in I think it's episode 2 where she says, oh, I'm a bit too tired to go out for a walk, and he's like, I haven't got walking on my mind. It's kind of like there is a lot of suggestion in there very quickly.
It's the Vincent. You have to do with a terrible accent, otherwise it does not feel authentic to Delta and the Bannermen.
I mean, poor Ray has trained to be a mechanic just to catch his eye, and you know, this weird alien woman just saunters into town and he's off.
She hasn't got a dinky Allen key.
He wouldn't be able to change a tyre.
Where was she when Tegan was stuck on the Barnet bypass?
I think I would have driven right by myself, to be honest with you, but that's by the by.
But no, I mean, again, Billy, I think we're in the Mark Green Street territory there. But Someone we do have Richard Davis, who is about as Welsh can be.
He's proper Welsh. Proper Welsh is our Richard.
And some lovely little comic touches there. So I like his thing with when he's got the wax in his ear and he turns on the sort of, I like. And actually he does the comic touches, but he also does the dramatic bits quite well as well.
Yeah.
The cliffhanger bits where they're going to kill Mel and
I
all the cliffhangers. Oh, I was going to say, of the two cliffhangers, the first one sort of works best. The second one, I feel, lacks something when it's just, I might have gone too far. And the resolution of that's a bit.
It's one of those cliffhangers where when they come back, it's a different thing that he says, isn't it? It's a bit like in Remembrance. He says, "Oh, I think I've gone too far," and then when you watch the second part, he doesn't say that. There's a slightly different dialogue.
Whereas the first year was don't do something that I do for a living is something that I enjoy, or whatever he does with the another.
I'm hoping that's not Welsh
authentic accent. No, he's not Welsh, is he? Is he not? He's surely he's trying a Birmingham accent there, even though he's Scouse.
No, I think you're right. You are right, actually.
Everyone at rehearsal when they were going on the table went, "What are you doing? You doing Welsh? You're not doing Welsh. Try this then." Brummie's good.
I've got to give a little shout out to the wonderful Hugh Lloyd, Henry, because for me he's so understated in the way that he approaches it, but he owns the screen when he's on, and there's just some really nice little interchanges. He can act with his face, and it's kind of, and he gets the very last scene at the end of episode 3 where it makes you wonder if there's more to his story than they let
I have a stat about that.
Hang on, is this stat purloined from the Utopia quiz a week ago?
I don't know.
I have a feeling it might be, but let's
it's about Name of the Doctor.
Yeah.
Oh, then if you already know this stat, I won't say anything. You should have been at Utopia and you would have known it.
I'm sure the viewer at home will thank you, and Jason, who was too drunk to acknowledge it at the time, will also thank you.
Exactly, I will indeed thank you, because I don't remember the stats, so I'm more than happy to hear it.
So in Name of the Doctor, he says that one of the things he'd like to do is retire and become a beekeeper. And so Stephen Moffat said that is Goronwyn? Is that his name?
Goronwy.
Yeah. So he sort of said, yes, that could well be a future incarnation of the Doctor. Or one of the, Infinity Doctors as we have now.
Don't get me started on that.
But yes, so that was my stat on that.
Absolutely love the scene where the Bannermen burst into the honey room and all the honey falls on them and then the bees attack them. That for me is a great little scene as well.
There is a bit earlier on though where he's showing showing them the honey, and he takes a pot off, and I don't know if you see it, the whole set wobbles just like that. He just takes one pot off, and I'm just like, oh my god, they must have been so afraid to touch anything because it looked like it was just made of cardboard. It was quite funny.
But Don Henderson, I think, gives he's actually sort of undervalued performance. Not many people talk about him as being a good fit. It is the part that Don, bless him, did in most things, but he does it well, and I think it's a credit to him that he does a good turn in this.
I agree. I think he's a great performer, underrated a little bit actually. But I think he turns in a really good piece in this, and he is a little shadowed, unfortunately, by some of the other names. But that's this cast for you. This was a cast of almost 1,000 stars. They were on casting. I mean, they probably shot a load of invites out and didn't realize half of them were going to say yes. But this is one of the most epic cast lists, as I've said already, that I think I can remember in a McCoy story.
You keep saying that. I'm thinking Ghostlight, Curse of Fenrir.
No, there are a lot. kudos to them because they managed to get some
But I've got a love for this story. I've got a love for those stories as well. But I got a little bit of it's a story very close to the heart. This one.
Well, yes, you remember the 50s and probably grew up with Ken Dodd.
No, if you don't mind, I remember the filming. I was there when they were filming it, actually. I went on the location filming for the day because we were in Barry, and I went to watch the location filming.
Did you shout out, "I've been ionized too"? No?
I would have had an accent like that, I think, back then as well.
No, nobody had an accent. Nobody had that accent.
No, it's quite true. I had quite a butch accent back then in the mid 80s. You've done it. You've made me. I will refer you once again to the telethon video of 1990.
That fact is about as verifiable as the quarks standing up in the 5. It's just not true, is it? It's just not true. Well, I think we have been up and around. I mean, because it's interesting, which I suppose we could slightly address, is that this is all on location, and the next story, therefore, is all in studio. They've done the sort of split and shunt thing. I think that gives it a very sort of fresh feel. I do think, I mean, Delta to me is such a summery story. It's a bright one, isn't it? You better watching it in. You put it on in December, it falls a bit flat somehow. But if you watch it in summer, you can go with it. Yeah. Are we heading towards scores on this?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay, then let's go to James then. Before we head to Gromwe.
So I said that this is a fun romp. It's Doctor Who meets sort of Heidi High. Even has the little yellow coat doing his little jingle. It is fun. It's not perfect, but it is good. And so I gave it a 7.
I always feel with your summations that you're going towards something really. I don't, and then it's quite a nice score, and I was thinking, crikey. Do you know what I mean?
I do know what you mean. I like to build up to a happy ending.
Build high for happiness.
Indeed.
Exactly.
Build high for the happiness there.
So Gromwe, what scores do you have for us? Gromwe had honey, not Marmite, though, just for clarity.
Do you know, I've not felt the need to bring the Marmite out for this season because I think this is a very, very straightforward. It's a good season. It's a very straightforward season. So I haven't felt the need to bring it out. I have brought my Shangri-La t-shirt out, as you can see, because this is a story that I really enjoy. Okay, for me, love the 50s element of it. I love that they're having a bit of fun. I love the fact that it's in Wales. So, there are so many good things going for it. Yes, okay. If you pick away at the surface of this, it's not an ultimate classic. So I'm not going there with, it's never too early and all of that sort of 10 from Len, because it isn't there. But it's a really enjoyable story. It's 3 episodes, and it just hits the mark on a number of levels, and just feels like everyone's having a bit of fun. So with that in mind, I am going for a very solid 7.5.
Oh, I genuinely thought you were going to go 9.
Well, no, because I already said I don't think it's up there in a 9, but I think a really solid. Get the fractionals out, because of course we have been a bit dry on fractionals, and it always upsets P-Bal when we bring a fractional out. But it's a solid 7.5. Not a shaky 7, solid 7.5.
He's not getting his Marmite out, but he's getting his fractionals. Should we be worried?
As long as there's a restricted viewing certificate on this video, we're fine. Okay. Yeah, I think it's not a perfect story. It's not, it's like an all-time classic. It's something I'd put on and I'd enjoy. I'd like. It's bright. It's fun. It's cheery. It's light. It's an enjoyable romp. I also give it 7.5.
Ooh.
I don't like it.
Very pleased with that.
It pains me. I just strike it down to 4 just to be unkind. So that gives Delta and the Bannermen 22.
Ooh.
We have a new leader.
New leader, and it's also my playing age. I've lost 22 stone filming this. It's
fake, isn't it?
It's like 30 degrees and an arc light.
I too have had to shut the windows because the neighbours are out, and trust me, I'm sweltering a little bit here as well.
Yeah, I think our neighbours was much enthralled by the reaction to the first two stories. So we are now moving on to the season finale, and we have got the Dragonfire. So who's heading to Spartos first? Go on, James. You got Patricia Quinn's wig on.
Okay, so what?
Honestly, it's one wig for 4 stories. It's such an investment. You can hold on to it for Lady Painfort next year.
I tell you, this is, comedy gold. So
I can see us going back and reshooting some of our season videos just so you can get this wig in there as well, frankly. I can see us having to do special editions for this wig.
Straight and make it Liz Shaw.
So, Dragonfire. Yeah, I love Patricia Quinn in this. So, I mean, she is amazingly bonkers, and I love her in this. We've got the introduction of Sophie as Ace. We get Glitz back for this story. This is Mel's last story, and I will come on to talk about Mel's sort of final scenes. I have mixed feelings. I will admit up front around sort of Mel's last sort of scenes and the way she departs. There's some really great moments in here. It's like Kane's face, melting. The special effects and things like that are really good. I actually quite like the dragon. A lot of people say, it's a bit rubbish, but actually I don't mind it. For me, I see lots of things that are stolen from other things. So like the face melt is very much Raiders of the Lost Ark. I feel like the singing gardens is a bit like Superman's sort of sort of Arctic base where they put crystals in and it shows stories and things like that. You've got Sylvester pretending to slip over every 5 minutes and nobody else doing that. And at some point we have to address this. All right. I'm not gonna start there. We'll go there, but at some point we've got to address the cliffhanger. But there's lots of nice elements to this story, and I'm kind of the different opinion to you, Jason. Is that viewing this, although yes, Sylvester by the end of this is well and truly in his stride. This last story, as much as it pains me to say, I don't think is quite as good as the first story for different reasons. And I may explain some of those as we go through, but it's a good story. And I like the way it introduces Ace to the show.
Absolutely. And, I like this story for a number of reasons. And I do think as we head through the season, the stories do get progressively better and better. So we end up with the return of Savalon Glitz, as you've already said. We have an Ace introduction to a new companion. And we have enough menace to put you off ice cream for life. And, I'm not a huge fan of the old studio stories because I think they lack a little bit. But, getting an Iceworld on screen in a studio isn't the easiest of tasks. And I think they actually pull this off fairly well. You're right, he's hit his stride. Sylvester is the Doctor. And you can already see where they're taking his arc now. You can see that they're turning him into a much darker character. The setup with the companion change now is going to take it down a different path for us as we go forward. So I think this story is a great bookend to what's been a good season. I mean, don't get me wrong, there's absolutely nothing wrong with season 24. It just starts off on a slightly lower key for me, but it builds throughout. I think Chris Clough's at his best here when he's delivering strong direction. He keeps the action coming, and I think Ian Briggs' script is multi-layered in this one. I think he delivers on a number of levels that, for me, makes this an interesting story. There are some great little set pieces. We won't go back and talk about him hanging off the ice face just yet. But, I think this is a very good, and actually was quite a frightening story at the time, because I do think the scene at the end is very, very graphic. So we'll no doubt talk about that. So no, I think this is a great end to the season. I think we've built, and I think we're going out with a bang.
As a child, I think the thing that traumatized me most was the little girl leaving her teddy bear behind. That's what haunted me, genuinely. I think that's what I carried with me.
She put it in Kane's bed, didn't she?
she basically tops her own bear. It's a bit distressing. If you were unkind, you might point out that the biomechanoid is the spitting image of Victoria Beckham now. It's chilling. One thing I don't think we mentioned, and I think I'm right in saying this, Sylvester Brolly, that he obviously has his cliffhanger with, only started in Delta and the Banner. It wasn't in the other two. He has a sort of strange bone effect thing in parallel.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. And that was something I'd never really sort of considered till I did the run, and I thought, oh crikey, he didn't have the very subtle question mark Brolly from the offset. Dragonfire, the interesting thing I sort of feel with Dragonfire is that when I sort of started being a fan as well, I think Dragonfire was my favourite out of the season, and as it's gone on and as I've sort of preached it, it's sunk with me. It's not something that when I come back to it, I think that is way better than I've seen this and I've seen this. Maybe it was because it was better than the others to start with, and I've made more time to go. But for me, it doesn't. I'm not as struck on it now as I am the others. Sophie hits the ground running. It's nice, and I think she works well with Bonnie. In some ways, it's a little bit sad that perhaps there weren't two stories where they were both together, because they work well, and their characters, they're very sort of yin and yang. They work. Lovely to see Sharon Taylor back after her camper in Stones of Blood. Back. And if you do watch the extended version, you do get a little bit more Sharon, and I was quite thrilled by that. Only a little bit more. I mean, the character is basically the most reckless mother in the galaxy. And also, she manages to lose her child, not find her child quickly, and avoid like total massacres of everybody.
She's the luckiest woman. She just at the end, she just walks out, oh, there's my child. Everybody else has been killed off. And she's like, oh, let's go home and have tea.
But then all the ships have gone, because the gist is that Glitz is the last ship that they can all get on, and that's why he kills them all. So presumably, the ending means that Glitz, Melanie, the mother, and the child are all going to have to team up for a Big Finish series. I don't know.
Why have they not done that yet?
I think sort of, as I've slightly broached the subject, Mel going, on one hand, the theme feels, and I can see that they've written this, and I can feel it's been written, and but essentially she just decides, you know what, I'm done with traveling with the Doctor. I'm going to go and travel with Glitz, who I've had no interaction with really through the whole of this, and I don't like him. That's criminal. He's got no trait. He's untrustworthy. But hey, I've had a great time with you, Doctor. So I'm going to go and sort of do what I've been doing with you, but with someone I like less.
That's the issue I have with the Mel departure, is the scene where he's saying goodbye to Mel, and I think it's in the audition tape. I've watched so many extras recently. It's in the audition tape. He's doing that same speech, I think, with Janet Fielding. He does some of the audition tapes with, and it's a really doctorish goodbye. It's like, oh yeah, you've already gone, you've just arrived, and So that scene I quite like. It's quite touching. But you're absolutely right. The fact that she would just go, "Oh, I think it's time. I had a bit of a crush for Glitz in the last time I saw him, so I think I'll just go and see what's going to go on." As I said for the previous story, I think if she had decided at the end of Delta and the Bannermen that she wanted to stay on Earth in the 1950s, or if she'd said to the Doctor at that point, "Look, I want to go," absolutely fine. I just find it really odd that she would just decide at this point, "I'm going." It just feels not. Oh, okay. I'm going to say it feels tacked on. It feels like we've got to get rid of Mel. Let's just send her off for Glitz. That's how it feels to me. And I know some people don't feel that way, but for me, or as much as I love the touching scene between her and Sylvester, I just feel it's kind of like we're at the end of the series. We know she's leaving. Let's just make sure we write her out. Maybe I'm being harsh.
No, I think it's again one of those things that I suppose if you just take it on face value, you go, all right, so she hasn't even sort of given an indication. And the weird thing is obviously because they've taken all the time casting her replacement. It's not a situation where it's like Louise or whatever, where up until the studio day, they were still like, "You coming back next year?" "No." "You coming back next year?" It isn't one of those situations where actually she'd left. They'd cast the new, that was what was happening. So it seems odd that you couldn't just have sown a little seed of, I've had enough of this, or can you drop me home, or something like that. It would have even made more sense if she'd have said, "Okay, can you drop me home, Doctor? I think she wants to travel with you," and then just ended it like that, and then just assumed that at some point after the adventure, he dropped her home after 28 adventures for Big Finish. So it's just a bit weird that she just buggers off with someone that she's got no connection with. I mean, it happens in life, but I just think it's a bit strange.
It does, but she's been with 2 doctors, so you would think there would be more. You'd think there would be a little bit more to her departure. And Jason, you were saying about the sort of Andrew Cartmel and his master plan. You can see here it's like, right, new companion, and we know that Ace is going to have a story arc for the next couple of seasons, and you can see them lining everything up ready. The Doctor is going darker. We've got a new companion, but I just feel sorry for Mel in the fact that she's kind of just like, right, you're surplus to requirements now. Even like you say, if they'd had a story together, and then she had sort of said, Doctor, spend your time with Ace. She's young. She needs your tutorship or whatever else. I'm happy to go off and live my own life. It just feels a bit jarring.
Bonnie's younger than Sophie.
I was going to say, roll the clock back, James, to watching it the first time round, and take yourself back to that era of the show. Bonnie was a companion that she split fandom a little bit at the time, because I say this with all the love and affection. She split because there were detractors that weren't happy with casting Bonnie because of her stage history and what have you. So, I think they were clearly going down a more darker tonal sort of direction, and we've said now a couple of times about Andrew Cartmel's master plan for what he wanted to do with Doctor Who at that point. He was looking to certainly rewrite some of the history of Doctor Who and make him much, much darker. And unfortunately, I think because of that, the perception of the companion at that time, I don't think that she could have gone down that journey, because they didn't invest in her, or they didn't believe in her enough. And I think in retrospect, whilst we got Sophie, the fabulous Sophie as Ace, I still think Bonnie was hard done by. So I absolutely agree with you. I think, history's a wonderful thing, and I think we look back in retrospect to all these things over the time, and I think maybe the wrong decision was taken at that stage.
I mean, there's a new Adventure Books head games where they bring Mel back, and it's sort of Mel with with Ace, who's been traveling with the Doctor for quite some time now and has become quite hardened and quite sort of, used to his manipulation, and the Doctor's a lot darker. And Mel's reaction to the things that they do is quite stark. She's like, what have you become? You've become a soldier, you've become this great manipulator. And you can see those seeds. You can, I know obviously we don't have beyond, season 26, the continuing story, but I think you're right. They've sort of gone, well, Mel's not that kind of character. It's almost like they've written her off and just gone, well, she's not really going to be happy about this, or she's not going to be, blowing things up or anything else. So let's get rid of her and replace her with someone with a little bit more streets, a little bit more, gung ho about them. And I think that's unfortunate, because I think she could have stayed and could have been a great companion, even along, I'd love to have seen them together, Ace and Mel, because they're so different. But you just get this one episode.
They work together in this story as well, so they get their scenes, and there is a really touching scene where the two of them sit down and have a sort of a heart-to-heart. And I think they would have worked well together. I think it would have been a good TARDIS team. There would have been definitely a different approach for both. But, the rest is history. It wasn't to be, but I think it is a shame in retrospect.
Do you think Bonnie was asked if she was staying? I don't think she was ejected, as well. I think, as is the way with Bonnie, she's not going to stick with Doctor Who for years and years. She does the thing, and that's sort of her career. And that's why she's had such a great career, because she's just kept going and doing
and
exciting
and quite rightly so, and
have they written potentially? I agree. I know she wasn't kicked off. It was her own decision. But ultimately, if they gone to her and said, "This is what we want to do with your character," and take her along a path, potentially she might have been, we don't know, but she could have been tempted for it. But no, I think it felt the right time maybe for the change to happen. And I think we were blessed with Sophie coming in and joining the team and taking us in the direction that they did in 25 and beyond.
After one interview with Patty on whatever that daytime live show was, I'd have been straight out those doors. That's what I'm saying. Anyone hasn't seen that on the extras, it's worth just having a little look back to get some context in the production of season 24, just to have a BBC show where the presenter just basically keeps telling you how awful everything is.
No, it's toe curling. You're just watching it going. I mean, I have to say there are some cracking extras on the Blu-ray for this. There's so much stuff to enjoy and to sort of delve into.
Cast wise, I feel slightly saddened that Tony Azoba is underused. I think it's much like Destiny of the Daleks. It's lovely that he's in though, and obviously comes back. But I do feel slightly underused. But it's the nature of the beast sometimes. But Patricia Quinn, I think, is slightly underplayed what you'd expect.
Yeah.
I don't think she's the full Quinn. It's quite. There's a few levels there. Edward Peel, incredible. I think he's absolutely on the money with that. Incredible performance. Very, very strong, very chilling, very under. And literally, that is what you needed the chief, the caretaker to be.
Yeah.
In Paradise. So that is what Richard Bryars needed.
Yeah.
I'm not going to give Richard Bryars acting.
There's such a just this when he goes up to someone and just does that with his hands, and that's brilliant. This idea that he could just kill people by touching them, and he does it with such malice. He's it's not over the top. It's just real. It just feels pure sort of evil. And it's just like, that's it. And he takes great joy in it as well. When one of the frozen soldiers sort of escapes and then threatens him, and he drops his gun into the sort of the whatever it is, dry ice, and he just picks it out, and he just, it's all done so well. It's not over the top. It's not sort of like camp super baddie. It's just malice. It's just really sort of quite evil. It's
We're
really
also,
good.
we're also in the era that I love the novelization of this one. It's at the point now where the authors are progressively more. Can I put this in an eloquent state at 10 o'clock at night? The authors are now novelizing their own scripts and they're adding a lot more to them. I'm not sure because I can't remember Time and the Rani's novelization well enough, but I know Paradise Towers, Delta and the Bannermen they're all good reads. Actually, Bonnie does a fantastic reading of Paradise Towers for the audio range. But yeah, this is the point where you start getting a bit more, and obviously the consecutive seasons, you get a lot of backstory and a lot of build. And I think a lot of my memories of this come from the novelization, which I think, and I could be wrong because again, memory plays right. Is there not a justification that he is hanging down to reach the next level?
That is so
and
yeah.
It,
so
and it disappears before him. It's
yeah. So this came up at the BFI recently when they did the screening, and they were talking about it. So in the original sort of story or in the direction, there was a level below which he was lowering himself down to get to, but kind of misjudged it, or it was there was something else. And that's how he got into the cliffhanger. But the problem is when you do watch it, it just looks like he just went, oh, I think I'll try and climb down here, and then got stuck. And it is one of the worst cliffhangers. I mean, it is literally a cliffhanger, but it is one of the worst because you're just like, what? Why on earth did you do that in the first place?
Because the reverse shot shows that it's a sheer drop.
Yeah.
And then when Mel and Ace come along,
there's a level
because there's a ladder to drop to. So
yeah.
Yeah.
I think they got to a point where they had to just leave it in. They were just like, we run out of time, we'll just leave it in. People will be fine with it. But obviously a lot of people do still, I remember watching the first time going, what is he doing? But it is what it is. There are other things in this story that are better than the cliffhanger. This was voted in the 40th anniversary on when UK Gold did their 40th anniversary of Doctor Who special. This was voted the favourite 7th Doctor story
by fans of Dragonfire.
Yeah, by fans of just this story. No, this was apparently the best 7th Doctor story. I'm assuming they hadn't watched season 25 or 26. They'd only watched 24, but they had voted it.
Only watched Dragonfire.
They'd only watched this one story, and they'd only watched episode 3. And they voted it the favourite story.
Another thing I'd like to sound Dominic Glynn, I think does a fantastic incidental score for this. There's some very gothic sounding parts, and I think the shots of the planet, obviously that's very enhanced because it's not quite so synthy sounding as certain other soundtracks might be from this season. I think he does an incredible score, which I think enhances the mood. Biggest question of the installment then. Is Starchild a pre-Hartnell Doctor?
Oh, don't get me started.
Is she a pre-Hartnell Doctor? I mean, she could be. She looks like she's going to go to the TARDIS. You're like, no. I'm going to regenerate into a policeman in Ireland.
Put your comments in the chat below. Seriously, there's 277 million pre-Hartnell Doctors out there, as far as we're concerned.
What are you talking about? I'm one of them. What?
That wig is one.
Wig is a pre-Hartnell Doctor wig. It's another use.
That wig is definitely a pre-Hartnell Doctor.
So, are we crawling to a score on Doctor Who and the Dragonfire? I hope the dragon gets you in the night. I use that. I like that one as a bilge bag.
Yeah, the dialogue of Ace in this is a little bit.
I bet you've never had a milkshake tipped over your head, neither. honestly, I use a lot of these. I mean, they don't all fit the circumstances in which I use them, but they are good to use. Okay, let's go to the pre-Hartnell Doctor.
So, I am of the same opinion as you, that if you'd asked me when this first went out, this one probably would have been my favorite story of the season. But over the years, I've come to enjoy the other ones more. And I don't know what it is. I find more fault with this, and not just the cliffhanger. There are some genuinely creepy moments, but there are also some other bits where I'm not a massive fan. So I gave this a 6.5.
6.5.
Jason just almost fell off his chair.
That's because he is actually a William Hartnell Doctor.
I'm a pre-William Hartnell Doctor, if you don't mind.
Well, you're pre-William Hartnell, I know that.
Right, let's go to my score. Pull the focus back. So let's go to my score. So, oh, hello.
What's funny?
The phone was telling me it looks like I haven't got a score. But
the audience feel the same after 10 minutes.
That's not the truth. I think it's trying to get in on the act. Okay, I'm going to make this one a little briefer. I like this story, and for me, I think this is heading towards being the best story in this particular season. I love the return of Savon Glitz, Ace, Bonnie. Okay, we've talked about some of the bits, maybe maybe the write out of Bonnie wasn't brilliant, but I think there's a strong script here. There's some good performances. Edward Peel as Kane is simply chilling. It's a nice way to wrap up the season, and with that in mind, I give Dragonfire a very, very solid 8.
Oh, it's tense. It's tense stuff here at Phantom HQ, where the final scores are in place. Dragonfire, I think, as I've said, it was always my favorite, and it's less so now. So nothing wrong with it. I don't hate it. I don't hate it. I don't think it's incredible. So I concur with James, and I gave it 6.5. I can see them trying to think, well, hang on, what does that mean? What does that mean? What does that mean in the scoring? Who's won this now? So Lindsay DePaul, Mike Moran, rock bottom. We have Paradise Towers with 18 points. Third place, Yorak. It's Time in the Rani on 20 points.
Ooh.
Second place on 21 points, it's Dragonfire, which means Heidi High Campers with 1 point more, 22. It's Delta and the Bannermen that is our hit of 24.
And I'm not upset about that at all.
That's quite a surprise, actually.
Incredibly close. Top 3 stories,
close.
22, 21, 20. I think,
But it's like you said, Jason, there isn't a Marmite story. There isn't one that you would say it's a 3 or a 2.
No.
They're good stories.
I gave Paradise Tales 5.
I know,
But that's
but
still not Marmite, though, in our world.
that's an average score.
That's almost as good as Genesis.
I mean, it is. And then, you take each season in the round as you get to it. I think this is actually I think we said at the start of this, there was new life being breathed in here. They were really trying, after the sort of trial of the Time Lord and the sort of unloved there, they really were trying to get this back off the ground, and they were injecting a lot of heart and soul into it. And I just think as I said, it missed its trick just at the beginning of the season. But there isn't a bad one. There isn't a terribly bad one in this season at all. And I think it's setting the scene for 25, which gets progressively better. 26 gets progressively better again. We are on an upwards curve here now with the McCoy seasons. And I think it delivers on all the levels that it needed to for a first season of a new Doctor.
I agree. I think there's a confidence and there's an attack with 24 that was missing with 23. I think 23 felt like it was apologising for the gap and not quite sure where it was at. And this feels like we know where we're heading. We aren't quite there yet. I think it's fair to say. I think there's a lot of things that they are building on. But you know, they're going to hit it. I mean, just as soon as they really hit it, they cancel it. I mean,
Yeah.
as the crow flies, you can feel that this series is nothing like the series before, but it is very much the genesis of what's going to, you know, be so good with 25 and 26. So I'm off to taste a little bit of Gromway's honey. I don't think there's any answer to that.
There isn't an answer to it. You're quite right, there isn't.
It's been ionized. Honestly, why aren't the t-shirts with that on it? That's a meme. So thank you very much, James. Thank you very much, Jason.
Thank you.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure. It's been an absolute pleasure again, as always.
Don't forget to put your comments and your thoughts below and like and subscribe. And we'll see you soon.